Is everything on this channel gonna become a series? I don't know, but I really need to up my foreign horror game lately. So here is a foreign horror movie you might have missed, just like me. Hey there, creepy peeps. My name is Nightmare Maven. Welcome back to my channel. As you can tell from the title of this video, we're gonna be talking about Call. Call is a South Korean horror film starring Park Shin-hye as So-yeon, who's staying at her old childhood home when she starts receiving disturbing phone calls on the house's landline. So-yeon realizes the girl calling her, Young-suk, is from the past, and the women strike up a friendship that turns dangerous when they start changing the past and the future by helping each other out. So this is based on a 2011 film called The Caller. Just for context, I've never seen the movie, so I don't know how it compares. First and foremost, for anybody maybe who isn't familiar with South Korean horror and thriller movies, they are pretty well known for making you feel all the things. Like, Korean horror is never just scary. At the very least, you're likely gonna cry also. And it's absolutely part of the reason why they're so popular, because they handle the differing tones and emotions so well. And Call is no exception. Introduced to So-yeon, who's taking care of her sick mother, who she also blames for her father's death when So-yeon was really young. So as you can imagine, the first thing Young-suk does when the two women realize that they are in fact living in the same house just 20 years apart is go and save So-yeon's dad. And there's a really interesting, like, supernatural kind of fantastical element where we see multiple times throughout the movie time like shift and move and change around So-yeon as Young-suk does things differently and makes changes to the future. So the first big twist of the movie is Young-suk saving So-yeon's dad, and now So-yeon is in a completely new life in which her father never died when she was a child. The horror comes in though when So-yeon tries to return the favor and help Young-suk by telling her that her stepmother is going to try and kill her, and when. So So-yeon ends up creating the monster that Young-suk becomes. And it's kind of brilliant because ultimately, mild spoiler alert here, just mute it until this goes away. Young-suk ends up ultimately undoing everything she did to help So-yeon, and So-yeon ends up at the end of the movie basically exactly where she started, the only difference being she's admitted her own faults and reconciled with her mother in an ending that made me cry big fat wet tears. The plot was handled really well, I think. I was wondering as the movie went on and the supernatural element was introduced how this was all gonna come to a head by the end of the movie, especially with our two main characters being about 20 years apart. But it comes together in a really interesting and compelling way that kept me on the edge of my seat. I feel like it could have easily fallen apart at the end with all like the time warping and time changing, all that. And it didn't. I'm glad it didn't. I also really loved the gloomy atmosphere of the movie and the setting also. It's set in like a rural South Korean village, but the majority of the movie has this like overcast, gloomy look to it, with the exception of when So-yeon realizes her dad is now alive again, and that becomes brighter. But the gloominess reminded me of like the early and mid-aughts horror movies that I grew up with, where like literally all of those movies, the vibe they were going for was making it look like it was about to rain at any given moment, which kind of adds to the movie because I feel like the whole landline being a connection to the past sort of supernatural element was a little gimmicky, and it also reminded me of early and mid-aughts horror movies that I grew up watching, where we have this phone that inexplicably reaches across time and space to connect these two women. And I'll just go ahead and tell you, plug your ears if you don't want to know, it's not explained, and I'm really okay with that. It really just felt like one of those horror movies I grew up watching where you go in, you suspend your disbelief, and you just go along for the ride. The performances were also so great. I do watch a lot of K-dramas, proudly admit that. So I've seen Park Shin-hye in a couple of different things, and she's always great in everything I've seen her in. Sadly, I haven't seen anything else that Jeon Jung-seo, who plays Young-suk, has been in, but she was brilliant and so scary. She really plays the role well of this girl who has been, one, incredibly sheltered, and two, physically and psychologically abused for a long time, who gains her freedom in a violent way. We can see how that shapes how she decides to then keep her freedom when the cops come knocking and she's starting to be suspected of murder. It's the kind of villain that logically makes sense. Like, we can see very clearly and understand very clearly how she got to this point. So it's like, not necessarily that we sympathize, but we understand how the character got here. And that's what makes her so scary, because it's so realistic. Overall, this is a super solid South Korean horror thriller. It's got the emotional moments that will pull on your heartstrings, and it is intense and violent and quite scary, and honestly not a bad way to spend an evening. It looks like the movie is exclusively on Netflix in the United States. I couldn't see anywhere that confirmed that's like it's a Netflix original, but I'm hoping that means that maybe it's on Netflix in other countries also. I would definitely recommend it if you're looking for something new to watch. So if you're like me and you missed this movie when it came out, I would definitely recommend it. If you've already seen it or you end up going to watch it because of this video, let me know what you think about it in the comments. And if there's any foreign horror movies that have come out in the past couple of years that people have missed and you feel like people aren't talking about, let me know in the comments and maybe I'll cover it in another video. Maybe this will be a series. Who knows? Why do I feel like making everything a series? It's probably something a therapist could figure out. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new here. Become a creepy peep today. I will see you very soon for a new video. Until then, stay strange. Bye.